Hello, everybody. This is Purge, and I'm here to throw the gauntlet down against SUNSfan. Now, he posted his Aghs list, and I disagreed with a bunch of things, so I took the liberty to disagree with everything, and let's get to it. So, first point here is that the way that SUNSfan actually did a metric for what he actually wanted in terms of how he ranked it is consistency. How often is it picked up? Theoretical power. How good could it be? Actual power, how good is it by the numbers? I feel like these are pretty similar. Fun factor, completely fucking irrelevant. I can't even believe he included this in the list. And personal bias, also pretty out of control. So the first thing that I wanted to show you guys is just what I kind of use to generate my thoughts on what I think in terms of how good something is. And this was my list I came up with. Number one, effectiveness of the Aghs upgrade on the hero. That's how much better does it make the ability, or how much better does it make the hero? And then you've got, can the hero farm an Aghs in the first place? That's really important because a lot of heroes don't have a farming ability, and even once they finish the Aghs, even if they've been greedy up until that Aghs point, does the Aghs help them justify the item for the rest of the game, or does it get items for themselves as the game continues? Can they even fit into their item build? That's really important as well. Just because sometimes you don't have a timing in a game where it covers the weaknesses that your hero has. It's a great item usually because it covers HP problems, because it gives you a point booster and an ogre club, but the actual plus 10 agility and plus 10 int for a lot of heroes is pretty wasted. So sometimes even fitting the Aghs into most heroes is not that worth it. It's especially true for carries, just because of the fact that they need to usually buy damage items or BKB or something like that. So that's kind of a big deal. You also got to do the stats of the item even benefit the hero. Like I said, plus 10 agility, plus 10 int most times, not needed. And the most important thing is, are there better items purchased on the hero? This is almost always the biggest thing when it comes down to, is it worth it for you to buy an Aghs on a hero? And you should be thinking about this last one most importantly when you're even talking about whether or not an Aghs is good on a hero. Now, it kind of comes down to how you choose like doing your list. How do you feel? How do you feel you like doing your list? Is it going to be based on the fact that they the Aghs upgrade itself is really good? Should you take what it does on the ability and say like, wow, this does a massive increase of ability for your ultimate, and remove it from the hero? I don't think that's worth doing personally, because it's too hard to talk about whether or not the Aghs is justified or if it's good without cross-referencing it to things like, is it core every game for that hero? So a couple of heroes that I wanted to point out at and mess with Shannon over. I'll go for some slight ones first. I think Dazzle is a hero that he ranked a little bit high. This is out of pretty much all heroes. There's about 80 heroes. 36 out of 80 I think is a little bit too high. Dazzle Weave Aghs is pretty good, but if we again pull up our qualifiers here, there's a couple. Oops, it's not working. Let me see. There we go. Number one, can a hero farm an Aghs? Not really. You have to use Shadow Wave. It costs 4,000 gold. That's very expensive. Can you fit in your item build? It's pretty okay there. But generic HP stuff that you get on heroes like Dazzle are good, but not amazing. Would you rather have an Aghs, or would you rather have a Force Staff and a Glimmer Cape? Pretty much always you're going to say Force Staff and Glimmer Cape without any question there. Especially because you also still need a mana regen item in there if you buy Aghs, so that'd probably be Arcane Boots. So it's Arcane plus Aghs. You could have Wand, Force Staff, Glimmer Cape. Far better for an item build. The Aghs upgrade effectiveness is pretty cool. Like, it gives you basically 2 levels of your ultimate, but I find that Weave is very difficult to use in a great way. I think it could be used better as a defensive tool, like planning to fight the enemy, weave your team like 10 seconds before the fight starts. Then when the fight starts, your whole team has like an extra plate mail. That's amazing. But using it offensively for damage can kind of be a little bit hard to do effectively, in my opinion. It's actually one of the reasons I think Centaur's Aghs is kind of bad. Just because it's very difficult to control when this one was clear bias. It's very difficult to control when this damage reduction gets done. So for example, when you initiate a team fight and your whole team runs at your opponents, the only way that this damage reduction really gets super value is if it's hitting, if you're damage reducing nukes that hit your whole team pretty much. Like if you're initiating against a Zeus or something and he Zeus ultis and you've got Stampede on, that's amazing. Great Aghs pickup by Centaur. But in a lot of fights, what happens is it'll be one guy that gets jumped on by one hero that has huge control like Void, or somebody that does like a Lena combo. And then if you Stampede, yes, you're initiating the fight by running in. And yes, that one guy is taking 60% less damage, but I feel like that's such a situational fight that even if it does save him, you might have just been better off using your Force Staff on him than an Aghs on Centaur. I just feel like there's almost always better items. I mean, if you already have like Blink and Force on your Centaur, if you're playing off lane, whatever, buy an Aghs. But there's very situational games where Aghs is the right move, and using it as the damage reduction aspect is iffy at best in team fights. What if you get initiated on first? What if you initiate in a way and you don't see how the rest of the fight is going? I just see so many ifs here, and in no way does it justify 7 for a hero that doesn't even buy it every game. It's ridiculous. The terrain walking can be useful, but I don't feel that teams use it to its utmost potential, which I completely understand because it's difficult. So that's the first one that was obscenely overrated here. We'll go back to some slight overrated heroes. Vengeful Spirit, I think, is one of those. I play Venge a lot. It's one of my most played heroes. Lowers your cooldown down to 10 seconds. It's very good. Creates an illusion of yourself when you die, and you get it for refreshed abilities. So you can stun again, you can wave a tear again. All around, pretty cool Aghs. But again, if we pull up our notepad again, issues. Effectiveness of the upgrade. It's great. Very good. The stats that it gives you, great. 4200 HP generic stats. Very good. Can you farm an Aghs? No, you really can't. It's 4,200 gold. You don't have an AoE skill except for Wave of Terror. Please don't use that to farm. You have a single target stun. You have an effective right click, but usually you buy things like Tranquil Boots. You don't have time to farm this. You don't have time to fit this into your item build. You're usually the 5 hero. You're usually swapping yourself to save a carry. You should be dying in those cases. Is it better to have Aghs? Yeah, I'd love to have an Aghs every time that I play Vengeful Spirit. But I've still never bought Aghs on Vengeful Spirit because I've literally never gotten much of a chance to do so. Because I'd rather have Blink Dagger and Force Staff, or a Medallion and Force Staff, or earn Force Staff Blink Dagger, or Ghost Scepter, or Glimmer Cape. Like, almost always, I'm going to buy one of those combos first, easily. Maybe I'll even get an Aether Lens in there instead, but buying an Aghs is just not justified for so many supports. And to be honest, most of the heroes that I do have on the slight overrate by SUNSfan here are support heroes, just because I don't think SUNSfan has played a support in his entire goddamn life. He doesn't understand how difficult it is to justify farming 4,000 gold. Do you think he would understand it by hanging around with Slacks all the time? Because Slacks loves rushing Aghs. But when you hit these mid-game scenarios against heroes that can solo kill you, and all you have is like Arcane Boots and 3 plus 10 stat items, they're going to kill you every time. Because that's the equivalent of only having 200 HP, despite having like 4,500 net worth. That could instead be Tranquil Boots, Glimmer Cape, Magic Wand, and then he never kills you. Like, why would you spend all of the gold to slowly gain 1,000, slowly gain 1,000? It's only really worth it if you're a hero that can farm it really fast to justify the rush build that would make your ability more effective in the mid game. Another good example of that is maybe like Jakiro. SUNSfan rated this one really low here at 81, but there were some games where I find that Aghs Jakiro has been used in pro games where I felt it's useful. One game I might have been Epicenter, but Alliance picked Jakiro. They were on Radiant and their opponents had Dire. So by picking Jakiro and rushing Aghs on it, first of all, he has the ability to farm it just because he has so many AoE abilities. He can easily push out waves. He can sometimes get tower kills and things like that. And just by farming in that way while increasing his HP, it's kind of cool because with the Aghs, it allowed them to contest Roche. Because once you are on Radiant side, you have a Roche disadvantage. So with the Aghs, they could drop the Macropyre in the enemy jungle. Oops, I should probably do this. Boop. There we go. My bad. You can drop Macropyre in the enemy Roche pit, and then they can't Roche for 30 seconds. Because if they do, they're standing in this burning magma for 30 seconds. And then it has a 30-second cooldown, but you could cast it again. So I thought that game was very interesting. I seem to remember they had a lot of good area control. But things like that have to be very considered. And this is a hero that's kind of similar to Dazzle and Venge in that they'd love to farm the item, but Jakiro actually can. So maybe there's some games where Macropyre can be useful. That's another thing that's really important. How often does the hero actually purchase? How often do players actually purchase the item? For a hero like Jakiro, it's extremely rare, and that's how it should be. Another hero very similar to that, actually, that was just above is Legion Commander. I think SUNSfan severely underrated this. Again, I don't think this is in any way a buy every game item, and a lot of times buying this in a pro game is almost always the wrong choice, just because I find that most teams are good at moving around the map now, that none of them get caught, and therefore it's not worth getting an Aghs because you don't duel anyways. But if you guys are playing pubs, I really recommend occasionally buying a Legion Commander Aghs, and it's because what it does is it increases the duel duration for a super long time. He's kind of underselling this here. 5.5 to 8 seconds. I mean, that's one way to look at it, but the issue is that he's also not showing the scaling from each level. Like a level 1 duel, I believe, is probably like, 4.5 seconds, and then it goes 5 seconds, and it goes 5.5, and the Aghs duel, I don't know if it's 8 seconds at all level, but the important thing is that it only allows the two heroes dueling to damage each other. So I bought this in one of my pub games when I was doing pretty well for dual damage. You definitely have to have dual damage to justify this purchase, but if you get it with a blade mail, it pretty much guarantees that if you duel somebody that has way more physical damage than you, that they will kill themselves on you from your blade mail, if you have decent damage anyways. And it also super counters heroes that have counters to your duel. So things like Shadow Demon, normally he just disrupts his ally or the Legion, and you waste half your duel duration and there's no way you duel. But the one game I played, I was actually versus a Shadow Demon. I bought Aghs. I dueled one of the two really strong carries that could easily solo kill me because I had huge damage. And then because of that, I ended up tanking the disruption, and then I spawned afterwards, and then I still killed them anyways. Like, those kinds of things can be really good. And I think Legion's Aghs here is maybe being a little undersold. Again, don't buy this often at all, but there are times that you should consider this. And for that reason, I find this to be way too low placed if he's comparing it with things like Zeus's Aghs, which I haven't seen purchased in a pro game in maybe, it's been a couple years, that's for sure. Tusk's Aghs, things like this. It doesn't deserve to be in this kind of area. I think it should be a little bit lower down, very similar to Jakiro's Macropyre. So let's hop to another hero. These heroes are very similar in how I feel about them, but both Warlock and I think are slightly overrated in terms of their Aghs. Maybe this one's pretty appropriate. The double golem is quite good. The stats are reduced. They do 75% of the original, which means it's a 50% stat increase if you put them together, sort of. So it does increase their damage by about 50% for an Aghs. That's pretty good. But it actually does even more than that, because the Burning Aura, as well as the Cleave, which is every auto attack it does a pure Cleave hit, those don't get reduced. So I would assume that the numbers have got to be more like, it's got to be around 2 times, especially because it's pure damage. The problem with this Aghs, in my opinion, though, is that it's pretty expensive. It, again, doesn't give you any survivability against heroes like Slark or heroes that are going to be trying to kill you in the mid game. Aghs gives you HP, but most carries can guarantee kill you at some point. So with Aghs, yes, it makes your ultimate better, but it's also 4,000 gold. And again, that could be Blink Dagger with anything else, I feel like. And that could be Midas into Blink, that could be Midas into Aghs, that's pretty respectable, I'd say, or Midas into Lotus Orb we've seen some of, throw an Urn in there. There's a lot of other options, and there's also a lot of heroes right now that are just hard countering Warlock, most importantly Ursa. Very good against Warlock Golem to kill him. Very good against Warlock the hero. Another really good anti-Warlock hero is Timbersaw, actually. Just tons of AoE pure damage. Those damage the golems, so even if you drop the golems, they die fast. Luna's quite good against them, so for that reason, be a little careful about when you buy Aghs on Warlock. I don't necessarily think this is misplaced, but I'm a little unsure. The other one I feel like I'm going to get a lot of flack for this one, but I feel like Ancient Apparition Aghs is a little overrated. It is used a lot in the pro scene when people pick Ancient Apparition. Just because of the fact that it does make the duration of Ice Blast up to 17 seconds. It's great, great Aghs, but the problem is that it's a long cooldown, 35 seconds. You can only use it once per fight, and I find it's very difficult to land the ultimate on multiple heroes. I personally kind of prefer to play as more of a scrappy hero, if that makes sense. Sit in the team fight, cast things like Cold Feet a lot, and Ice Blast the one hero that your team initiates on. It kind of depends on the game, obviously. If you're against like a Dazzle or something, getting an Aghs is probably better, just to almost guarantee that you do kill those heroes. But a lot of Ancient Apparitions do kind of play at least in the pro scene, they play this like Midas into sit back and Ice Blast split push lanes, as well as Ice Blast lanes where you're expecting fights to be. And me personally, I miss a lot of those Ice Blasts, so personally I don't much like the Aghs on when I feel like you could instead buy something like a Rod of Atos for 3,100 gold, and with that 3,100 gold, then you can guarantee that somebody that doesn't have a Blink or a Force Staff is going to get stunned by your Cold Feet. I think that has a lot of value for the hero. Like, getting an Aghs on continues to make your ultimate amazing. But what about your other 3 skills? That's what I'm thinking about. Those are the things that can make Ancient Apparition very good and can open up a lot of other opportunities. And most A's are usually playing 5 positions. So, I mean, people may flame me for this, but I sort of feel like people are a little too focused on Aghs in terms of Ancient Apparition and on Warlock. So, at least pub players. Pro players have their justifications, and I feel like they use it in that way that it becomes effective. But outside of pro games, I think this Aghs is possibly a little overrated. It does do quite a big damage increase, by the way. I think by level 16 it does something like 30 damage a second, so an extra 7 seconds of that is actually quite huge. It's like an extra 200 damage or something like that. So, pretty strong ultimate, but I think potentially a little overrated. Another one that I thought was super overrated in terms of SUNSfan's placing is Faces of Void Chronosphere. Puts the cooldown from 100 seconds to 60 seconds. That's good and all, but again, we got to pull up the notepad. You can farm the Aghs. He's got no problem with that. He's got a good right click, and you get a Quelling Blade and stuff like that. Is the Aghs upgrade good? It is quite good. 60 seconds means you can pretty much chrono every fight, and you can easily chrono for ganks and have your chrono up ready for the next high ground defense. But can you fit it into your build? You can. It gives you some moderate stat items, but does the HP increase really make you that much stronger? No, it really doesn't, because you kind of want damage in combo with your chrono. Otherwise, you're kind of just chronoing and expecting your team to kill your opponents afterwards, which can work in some lineups depending on what you have. But I think for the large majority of games, no Void is going to build this item, because it's so much better just to build a Diffusal Blade for 3,300 and then build a Manta for 4,900, and then you have damage, you have HP, you have Split Push, you have Mana Drain. That's a lot of utility in damage output, and most people are building their Voids that way. Also, it gives you a ton of protection against silences and disables and things like that, slows. That Aghs really doesn't. The HP isn't really that justified in that way. The stats of the item benefit the hero, but they're not great. I would say they're okay, not amazing. And are there better items purchased? Yeah, there really are. So I think this one was super overrated. This is very much I look at this and say, like, this is a very... he looked at the increase of the Chronosphere cooldown, and he's like, this is great Aghs, but the problem is it just doesn't fit in the hero super well. It used to better when Void had more survivability, more damage, time lapse was more effective, things like that. There was more ganking, and there's way more combos with Void. So there's things like Phoenix, heroes like that easily comboed with Void gets kills, or when Elder Titan was a little bit stronger, or things like that. Like I'm thinking like ESL Manila, for example, or not ESL Manila, Manila Major, for example. That kind of a tournament was a really good showing by OG using Void with other heroes to do amazing things. But that's not really as available as it is now. So Voids are forced to have more damage items. That's why this Aghs is a little bit overrated right now. I think SUNSfan is living in the past, much like with Centaur. Okay, Omni Knight was... Oops, that's not what I want. I want the next one. Omni was also super rated highly. I think this is a huge mistake, though. I haven't seen an Omni Knight build an Aghs in a pro game in a very long time, and we've seen a lot of Omni Knights recently. An extra fortify for buildings. This is like one of those things that SUNSfan gets really hung up on. Is like, but it does this thing that nothing else does. But who gives a shit, dude? It costs 4,200 gold. The global range is sick, but what team is not going to be there? And besides, if you didn't have an Aghs, you could have a Blink Dagger and an Aether Lens, which means it doesn't really matter what range you're at. You should be in the area, and you should be able to save somebody. It's very similar to how he looks at Centaur ulti. Maybe that's why he's rating it so high, because he wants it to be Centaur ulti. I'm not sure. It doesn't heal anymore. He's right, and Slex needs to stop building this item because it's really not that good. And Diffusal's extremely popular right now in pro games. Jug, Faces Void, tons of heroes are buying Diffusal. I think this Aghs is super overrated right now. I would much rather have an Omni Knight that has a Arcane Boots and a mech, and then has a Glimmer Cape. Same cost as Arcane Boots, Aghs, Omni Knight does so much more. You can purify somebody and mech afterwards. You can maybe get a magic stick on top of that. You could purify yourself, mech yourself, and do a magic wand. That's like 700 HP, and repel, and guardian angel if you need to. But no, somebody wants to have an Aghanim Scepter so that their ultimate on a 150-second cooldown will be global. Who gives a shit? Glyphs are very important late game in these like trade scenarios or in base races, but it doesn't in no way justify the item on Omni Knight over other luxury items like Glimmer Force, Blink Dagger, Aether Lens, or Guardian Greaves. There's just so many better options. Shame on you, SUNSfan. This one sucked. Let's see what else. Naga Siren heals allies for 10% per second. This is occasionally purchased. This is kind of a similar argument to how I talked about Legion Commander, except Naga Siren is... her purchase is definitely more common, I would say. But I am not super sold on this. I think it has some potential. I would like to see this strat actually be done in a way where your opponent has a BKB carry, and then you get Aghs on Naga Siren. That way, when you fight that guy, when he BKBs, then your allies are also getting healed for 10%. That seems amazing. But outside of that, I think it's kind of hard to execute this in a lot of ways. But definitely has some occasional value depending on the game. But I would say this is a little overrated based on how often it's built. That's what I would argue. And I even, like, this is really good, but I think it's definitely overrated. It's just, the hero is just so much better as a carry that it makes the Aghs kind of bad. That's how I would look at it. Alright, let's see what else we got. Prophet here. Another hero I was a little disagreeing with. This build got really popular for a while, and then it instantly fell off because players realized that not only were they pushing all the waves, but they're also creating a treants that let their opponents farm the treants. So I think the Prophet Aghs is a little bit overrated, at least by SUNSfan here. It's I mean, pretty solid, is a pretty good representation, but if I compare it to some of the other skills up here, we'll get to these two later. But if you compare it to a thing like Puck Dream Coil that actually does get built by Puck sometimes, or Viper Strike on paper is maybe one of the better Aghs upgrades, but again, it just, oh god, I didn't realize I had the notepad open this whole time. I bet I was like blocking everything. Viper Strike effectiveness of the Aghs upgrade is god tier. I think it's one of the best, honestly. 900 range, 12-second cooldown, super good. But yeah, this one it's okay. The damage increase is all right, but I kind of feel like you'd be better off just buying something like a Dagon 2, 500 damage nuke. Yeah, your ultimate can do more damage by the time it bounces to the hero, but a Dagon, I mean, Prophet can pretty much buy any item in the game, and if you're spending 4,200 on an Aghs, I just don't see it being very effective. It's good for bad players. You can farm the wave, you can farm the map faster, but I don't think it's very justified. I think there's a much better way to play Prophet, and it's pretty much buying any other action or utility item, like Orchid, Hex, Maelstrom, Blink Dagger, Shadowblade, stuff like that. Way more better items right now. Alright, I think that is just about it for the minor ones, and then I'm just going to start going ham on SUNSfan here. The Enigma one's also super overrated. On paper, amazing, but it's not justified purchasing this because it literally is just tying another skill to your ultimate. Your ultimate's already amazing, in my opinion, in a lot of cases. Yes, it does way more damage, but I think Midnight Pulse alone already kind of covers a lot of what this Aghs would do. On paper, again, very cool idea, but I don't think it's very justified. This is another one that I think was really overrated and overrated and overrated and overrated. Frankly, all of these are pretty hard to fit into somebody's item build. Even the Darkseer Aghs, something that used to be purchased, is just not very good anymore because there's so many good items Darkseer can pick up. Things like Shiva's Guard, Lotus Orbs, stuff like that. So, all right, now let's really get ham here. This one I thought was maybe the most love-seen placement. Third place, Night Stalker. Night Stalker Aghs is really good. It's amazing for vision. It's great for lowering vision of your opponents, but maybe I'm being a little altered here because I think Night Stalker is a situationally useful hero, and in most cases is not very good. But yes, you can manipulate the day-night cycle to benefit himself, but most of that is around the fact that your opponents can only see 600 units, and around the fact that it's the fact that Night Stalker's passive is so good and your abilities are better at night. I just don't see this as good. Like, okay, you can benefit the day-night cycle and maybe try to abuse vision for your ganks and smoke less often or something like that, and that's kind of cool, but it also requires you to farm an Aghs on Night Stalker, which isn't super easy, by the way. I'll just pop this up for a moment and hopefully not forget about it this time. Can you farm it easy? Not really. You kind of have to like roam and do well for it to be useful, and that takes a lot of work, I feel. So it does work, and the stats benefit the hero, and there's not really better items purchased on the hero. It's definitely a great Aghs, but I think this is ranked about 10 too high, personally. I think it's just a little bit too high. And I certainly wouldn't rank it higher than Keeper of the Lights. I mean, yes, during the day, Keeper of the Light doesn't reduce his opponent's vision like the Night Stalker Aghs does. But the other skills that you get from this hero are god tier. The fact that your Illuminate doesn't ever have to be channeled. You always get Spirit. You always get Recall and Blinding Light. That's amazing. Especially Recall has been abused heavily right now, lately with Keeper of the Light. And this is arguably the most abusable skill in the hero at the moment, other than Illuminate, I guess. And plus the fact that Illuminate heals for up to 500 HP. That shit's amazing. This one should really be more down here towards number 3, and I would probably move Night Stalker up at least like 7 or something like that. I'm also pretty upset that Necrophos is here too. I think this one is, oh, I forgot about it. Nice. What else is new? I think Necrophos is way too high here. This is another thing where, again, it's a mechanic that doesn't exist anywhere else. You're right, SUNSfan, but I think it's super overrated. Again, it's not a core 100% of the time. There will be times you buy Necrophos Aghs, and it's usually going to be mid-game or late-game just to prevent buybacks, and it's a lot of abuse in pro-game scenarios, because if you get one hero pick-off and they die and they get Reaper Scythe, then yes, you've got Roche. That has some great advantage, but this might be a little bit, I would say a little, this ranking is a little tainted by SUNSfan's experience with top-tier Dota players. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to think of this as on his own. It does give you the ability to take hero advantages that guarantee that you take towers or racks attempts or things like that, or team 5v4 team fights when your opponents can't react to that with buyback. That's a huge advantage by all means, but I don't think it justifies 4. The damage increase is really not worth talking too much about. It's really all about the prevents buybacks. That's about it. He can farm the item, but he almost always buys other things like BKB Yules, Shiva's Guard, half tanky items like Bloodstone. No, that's not a good item. Don't buy Bloodstone. Maybe Octarine Core can fit in there sometimes too, but I just don't really see Aghs on Necro is one of the best in the game. It has amazing utility, but I would in no way say it's like... I'm valuing too much the fact that Necro does not buy this every game. I'm putting that a lot into my argument on this one. I'm not as confident about this one as the Night Stalker one, but I think it's definitely too high. Probably the worst offender really is the Centaur Warrunner, but I already talked about that one a little bit. Morphling was another one that I was pretty annoyed with, that it was all the way up here. It's so good on paper. Like, you make a hybrid of your ally, and you can use all their basic skills for like 20 seconds. But we're talking 4,200 gold, man. It's so much. Morphling never wants to buy that item. Yes, it gives him, in some ways it's slightly good because it gives him 10 strength, 10 agility, so technically it's at 4,200, 20 agility, 10 mana, or 10 int, 175 HP, 175 mana item, but not for 4,200 gold. That's just not justified. A Yasha costs 2,000 gold and it gives you 16 agility, and is arguably better stat-wise than what that Aghs does in a lot of ways. I just do not like Aghs on Morphling. I just don't see that as useful. I haven't bought it yet, so maybe I'm being biased here. And yeah, maybe you can do stuff like double tombstone and things like that, but I just feel like it's a real shot in the dark here. Speaking of shot in the darks, Wind Ranger, awful without focus fire. So I kind of agree with this being really important. Overrated, slightly. Overrated slightly, very easy to stun this. Very good. There's some good things in here. What else are we looking at? Huskar was super placed high. I think Braz tweeted me about this one, and I actually agreed quite a bit. This is an item that just doesn't fit Huskar, to be honest. Are the stats good for the hero? Not really. Gives him HP, gives him int, that's wasted completely. Gives him 10 agi, not very good. I'd rather buy like an armor and attack speed item like an AC. That's way better than plus int and plus agi, in my opinion. Why would Huskar want to life break for that much of a damage increase? I would only justify this against somebody that was going like tanky Centaur or a Pudge or something. I just don't see the benefit here. If Huskar's buying this, he should be support Huskar or something like that. I don't see it. I don't see where a core Huskar buys this and wins a game. Because by the time you're resorting to buying an Aghs on this hero, then your opponents have BKB, so they could just dodge the damage. You'd also have to cast it multiple times to justify its value, and it's a 4-second cooldown. It's also lowering your HP by a lot as well. Actually, don't remember if it does go up to 65. Might still be 35 on yourself, but don't quite remember. But why not just buy a damage item? It's 4,200 gold. That's like, you could almost buy an MKB there. That's a halberd. You could have a whole halberd. That's 20 strength, which is 400 HP. It gives you 45 damage, I believe, and it gives you 25% evasion, and you can disarm somebody. Why would you not buy that over an Aghs? It's just... Huskar should win by just attacking somebody. If you throw one spear at a guy, you do 140 magic damage over 7 seconds, plus your physical attack. Why mess around with buying an Aghs just so you can life break for more damage? The permanent slow thing is maybe one thing that has some value, that you can slow people and then nuke them again and slow them and nuke them again, but this is just assuming they can't just kill you. And if you're buying this so that you can permanently slow them, and they can't kill you, then you're already winning anyways. It's just a win more item, kind of. I'm just not sure there's a lot of cases where perma-slowing somebody would be more justified, unless you're against a super fast hero that's hard to kill. I'm not sure. Maybe this is good against Morphling. I'd rather just right-click the guy, though. Oracle's another one. I actually have a spreadsheet to talk about this one. Gives you a 1 second cooldown on Purifying Flames, and a 0.1 second cast point instead of 0.3. Now, I actually did this on an Excel spreadsheet. Why don't I add that? Oh, it's not Excel, it's OpenOffice. Because I poked around to say, like, oh, is this actually good or not? This might be a little bit hard to see. I could zoom in a little bit. So here's, like, seconds lapsed and stuff, and how much heal you get. This is without casting Fate's Edict, which gives you magic resistance, but, you know, if you cast, like, 4 Purifying Flames on somebody... is this too much? Seconds lapse. Oh, I'm sorry. This is with healing. I believe, yeah, it's down here. So if you cast like 4 Purifying Flames on somebody when you Aghs them, they're going to heal for 856. That's assuming you don't use Fate's Edict. So it's pretty good. I mean, you can really pump up your ally when if you compare this to like a without Aghs, then your levels are not nearly as high as you can see here. These are like your max levels, like 380 to 400 damage. That obviously has already been doubled. That's why this number is even so high. And obviously they'll get more of that as time goes on, as you move the chart to the right a little bit. Yeah, you get a lot of healing out of this. And especially down here, actually. Over the course of a long team fight with Aghs, you're healing a buttload on your allies. I don't remember what these percentages mean. I made this a long time ago. This is kind of like out of nowhere. But yeah, you can actually heal an insane amount with Aghs. But again, we're talking about 4,200 gold, and Oracle can't really farm it because the hero just simply doesn't have much in terms of farmability, and so that's 4,200 gold that you would spend on Aghs. Instead, you could get Guardian Greaves to remove a silence from an Orchid. That's when somebody jumps on you, or you could buy a mechanism, and with the mechanism, you can double that heal anyways when you ulti somebody for 500 HP. Buy mech, heal somebody for 500 HP. That already offsets the heal that you're getting from Aghs. And everything that I think about this item is just, it just doesn't seem very worth it. I'm buying it as a core, maybe, but you're still hitting the same problem. You don't have a farming ability. I know Sumail played Oracle mid, I think for Captain's Draft, the last Captain's Draft we did. Just not very justified, I don't think. So Oracle Purifying Flames, not a big fan. Now, I believe we got a couple that SUNSfan severely underrated. And first one is definitely Techies. There's a couple of reasons. How long has that been on the screen? Probably the whole time. God damn. You know what I should have done? I should have put it up here. That would have made a whole lot more sense. Effectiveness of the Aghs upgrade on the hero. It's amazing. Huge damage increase for your ulti nuke. It goes from 300, 450 to 600 to 450, 600, 750 if I'm not mistaken. That's a 10-second cooldown and it's AoE magic. It's really good. Really good damage increase. Can the hero farm an Aghs or fit into their item build? You're damn right they can. This is a core item on Techies. Techies should always buy Aghs. Do the stats of the item benefit the hero? You're damn right they do. And it gives them another item you can drop when using Soul Ring or Arcane Boots. And are there better items to purchase on the hero? There's really not. Simply, there is not. The only item that's maybe close is something like Octarine Core. But Octarine Core is also like 50% more expensive. Aghs is the Techies item. It's built every game that there's a Techies played. It is super effective. And it also benefits him. Main reason this thing is good, it's not just about the damage increase, but you also get the minefield sign, which means that you can give invis protection to any of your mines in the area. So you can use that for mine games. You can also use it to simply not let your opponent detect your remote mines. It also increases your cast range, but arguably the most important thing is that as soon as you get a level 2, and once you get level 11 and you have Aghs, that means your remote mine is going to do 600 damage, whereas before it did 450. 600 magic damage means you kill an entire creep wave with 200 mana. So every single time that you throw a remote mine down, you get, what, 300 gold, something like that? 250 to 300 gold. That's actually a ridiculous amount of gold. So now what you can do is while you're busy mining a jungle, you can also throw a mine down in the lane every 30 seconds and also collect gold from that. And that ability that you can instantly one-shot it saves you time, it gives you money, and it helps you farm new items. Not to mention that obviously you can just drop 4 mines down and blow people up, so that's pretty good. But Techies Aghs is clearly, I think, in one of the top 20. If I could have remote mines on any other hero, I would buy Aghs every game, 100%. And that's not even with the invis aspect. I think even if you couldn't stack mines up, if it was just you threw it after a long cooldown or after a long animation and it blew up instantly, I would still buy it on so many heroes, because we're talking about a 700 damage nuke on a 10-second cooldown. That's a finger of death. That's really good. Techies Aghs. Super underrated by SUNSfan here. Techies does blow though. Terrible hero right now. Terrible hero, but Aghs, A+. This couldn't be said enough. Brewmaster. Brewmaster in terms of... Oops, close that and close that. There we go. Burmester. I feel like his Aghs was maybe a little underrated here. Certainly, I think it's far better than Dazzle, Venge, and a couple other heroes. This one maybe could be higher. The Tinker one's very good too. But I did some DPS calculations. It doesn't increase your damage by a huge amount. It's more of like it increases it. I hit level 25. I did a brew split. I tried to maximize damage. I got about 6,000 with regular brew split. When I did with Aghs, I was doing about 7,000. So it's a marginal damage increase, not by a lot. It gives you crit for your main Fire Panda, so you can double damage hit every 25% of the time. And then on top of that, you also get the Thunderclap, your first Brewmaster skill on your Brewmaster. But there's other benefits. You also get the Drunken Haze, which can be really good late game. That's 25% movement speed slow at the least. Even if they have an MKB, at least you're lowering movement speed by 25 at an AoE. That can be really beneficial. Clap, obviously, double clap, basically blinking, clap, ulti, clap. That can be really good if you have any disable on top of your opponents when you do that. A lot of damage output. I really like Brewmaster right now. I don't think he's a super good hero, but I think his Aghs upgrade is quite good. Yeah, you can buy things like Vlad's and other auras if you really want, but I think Aghs is so straightforward in being a Brewmaster item that I don't think you can pass it up too much in terms of saying that it's not a good Aghs upgrade. It's difficult to use, and it can be a little mediocre depending on the lineup that you're against, but I personally really like this. Maybe accurately placed, but I definitely take some issue to it. And the last one I want to talk about, Gyrocopter. Now, I'm a little bit of a Sidegunner fanboy. I'll admit that. But let's talk about this ability. Let's see how good it is. It's definitely not the second worst Aghs in the game, behind Outworld Devour. It's close to being good. I think it's bad right now, but I think it's very close to being good. Is it really worse than Zeus's ulti? I don't think so. I would never buy Zeus Aghs. There's just no reason. You got like Aether Lens, you got a Blink Dagger, you got a Bloodstone or something, you got an Octarine. I would even buy Leshrax's Aghs before I would buy Zeus Aghs. So what I'm trying to say is this is off target. I would probably put it one more tier down. This is definitely in Slack's tier. But what this is Gyrocopter's issue, right? Like Gyrocopter became popular as a carry, number one, because he had huge magic damage in the lane because of Rocket Barrage. So you're fast hero, you do a lot of damage output, you're great in a tri-lane. You also can farm very fast. Once you grab Helm of the Dominator, you jungle fairly rapidly using Rocket Barrage to nuke down neutral creeps. And then you stack Ancients a bunch of times and you clear it with Flat Cannon. So Ice Frog came along and said, hey, this hero's used all the time. Number one, we'll make Ancients harder to kill. Actually, number one was, let's massively increase the cooldown of Flat Cannon. I don't remember what it used to be, but I feel like it was 15 seconds. It's 30 now. It takes forever to come off cooldown. So just clearing the Ancient stack is pretty tough. Problem number two, Ancient stacking alone was nerfed. The creeps were buffed to give each other more armor. They were buffed to give each other more HP. And they were buffed to give each other more damage and attack speed. So heroes like Gyrocopter that individually attack every single creep there, it's kind of hard for them to clear those. Heroes like TA and Sven can clear them because they do cleave, sort of. They're both sort of cleaving, which is in a way pure damage. But Gyrocopter has to hit each one individually. And that's kind of difficult to do. TA can pass that, even though it's not technically cleave because she can hit so many units. But if Gyrocopter only gets 6 attacks every 30 seconds, then actually using Flat Cannon to clear an Ancient stack is very difficult. So Gyrocopter's way to like super farm in the past is kind of gone. Now he pretty much just has to fight to get gold. And you can't even jungle as well as you could before, because now a lot of the creeps in the neutral camps have magic resistance, so even using Rocket Barrage to farm isn't very good either. Keep in mind, you hit for like 100 damage mid-game, Rocket Barrage does like 600 magic. If that's getting reduced by like 20% or something, you're doing like 450 magic damage every 90 mana. And at some point you're going to run out of mana. The solution is physical damage, and it's single target. That's always been Gyrocopter's issue. He has tons of AoE magic damage and tons of AoE physical damage, but he wants to have single target damage so that he can jungle. And he's a ranged hero, so Quelling Blade doesn't really work. Not that Morphling doesn't do that, of course, but it's not really the right solution. What he needs is, he needs Aghs. Gyrocopter needs some Aghs in his life. I'm heavily anticipating a Gyrocopter pick, or buff at least, in the next patch. And I think Sidegunner is extremely close to being OP. And the reason is because it gives you an extra attack, and it kind of functions just as like a huge attack speed increase. Pretty equivalent to like, it's probably equivalent to like a 60% attack speed increase, at least, or something like that. 60, it's like a Hyperstone in some ways. So just from the extra attack that you get, it's like a Hyperstone, I feel. That justifies about half of its value. The rest of the half is not amazing. It does kind of fit into your build because it's an HP item, which you usually fill with things like Dragonlance, SNY, stuff like that. But the problem really is that just farming the Aghs in the first place is tough. It's 4,000 gold. It also doesn't give you lifesteal on the way. Normally you'll buy a Helm of the Dominator or something so you can actually jungle, but you don't get that either by building Aghs. So in a lot of ways the Aghs build is awful. You can't really get it in the jungle or in your lane very early. You'd have to like participate in ganks. And then usually you're better off buying like mobility items or something like that. But I really do like this build. It's just not quite there yet. So I would say this is inaccurately ranked because I know that this is going to be real OP soon. Because Gyrocopter is about to get buffed. And if any hero is currently in the dumpster and they also have a bad Aghs upgrade, it's definitely a very important thing to look out for. Watch out for those Aghs upgrades to actually buff them into being useful. Like Tusk, barely used right now. Gonna get a buff. Maybe it was Aghs, who knows. Probably not though. A lot of these heroes maybe going to get some Aghs upgrades or Aghs benefits. Bristleback? Winter Wyvern? No, most of these heroes are still occasionally picked. Yo, this Aghs actually is terrible. It's real bad. As soon as I get BKB or Yules or Lotus Orb or literally anything that removes silence, this is completely hard countered. So, yeah. I'm definitely a little bit of a Sidegunner fanboy. Phase Boots, Aquila, Aghs, into Maelstrom. That's a shitload of gold. But once you get that, you farm real fast, which is pretty cool. But then you kind of need like BKB and Lifesteal and Monkey King Bar. And that's why this build sucks, because it takes way too long to get up. But there might be some benefit to just fitting an Aghs into your build. Just throw it in there instead of an SNY. It's a very similar cost. SNY is, I believe, 4,100 right now. Aghs is 4,200. SNY does give you a lot more HP, but I believe it does not, actually. I think Aghs gives more. But then you're kind of lacking mobility a bit, so it's kind of a hard problem to solve. But I do like the Aghs. It basically increases your attack speed by a lot, so it allows you to farm neutrals more. Way faster. I should have said that a while ago, but now I've said it, and you guys are probably not sold on it, which is okay. I'll just keep buying Aghs on Gyro and continue losing games. But I like it. Alright, that's it. If you guys want to read the rest of SUNSfan's thoughts, here it is, sunsfan.gg/SUNSfan Aghs ranking. I'll link it in the chat below. Thanks for watching, guys. See you tomorrow.